Right now, we're looking to build just a solid company, and one, unlike traditional kind of startups that go from, 0 to 5 to 10, we're going from 0 to like $1 billion in a year. So we're looking to create something that is sustainable, that's differentiated, and frankly, it's a new way of delivering Medicaid for very complex populations. And so our goal is to create something that is sustainable, that serves our members well, where we have great outcomes, and really sets a different tone and tenor for how managed care is delivered in the future.
Hey everyone, it's Arick Wierson. Welcome back to another episode of Leverage Storytelling. I'm here with my very good friend, Sara Ratner from Deon Health. Although I'm not used to saying Deon Health because I know you from Nomi, I know you from so many other different companies. This is your new thing. We're going to talk all about that. But first of all, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Excited to be here.
Yeah. And so I know you're a big fan of the podcast. You told me you watched how many episodes before we got here?
All of them. Multiple times.
Great. So Sara, let's cut to it here. Tell me about Deon Health. What inspired you to get involved? What does the company do? What problem are you trying to solve?
Yeah. So about a year ago, I sold my division at Nomi Health and got approached about this opportunity to run a company that is focused on individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And if you're not familiar with that kind of sector of healthcare, it's a very small population, but it is the single largest line item on state Medicaid budgets. But it's traditionally managed like Medicaid. This population is on Medicaid for their lifetime. They're very complicated individuals, but persistently. So not a lot of variability in claims expense and things like that. But what inspired me is really, I feel like I've built my career around a specific thesis that innovation exists as a derivative from regulation in healthcare. And the way to be able to grow businesses is to really understand the regulatory complexity and leverage all the nuances that are part of it, and then build companies from that. And so when I was approached about taking on this role, it really sat at that intersection of what I believe is my thesis. And it also is, besides being something that is really complicated and interesting, it's personal to me too. So I had a stepsister growing up. She had chronic epilepsy, meaning she had, 50, 100 seizures a day. And this was in the 90s when really there was nothing people could do about it. And she had brain surgery and it did not work out well. And ultimately she ended up passing away in her 20s. And all she really had was a service dog. And now today, there are so many more advancements for how people are supported when they do have an intellectual and developmental disability, but it's so disparately managed, meaning you've got community supports on one end, you've got healthcare, you've got behavioral health, you have pharmacy. It's all spread out. And so there's this tremendous opportunity to bring it all together and manage it as a health plan under one roof. And so that's what we're doing.
So what are the disabilities we're talking about here? I mean, there's obviously a huge gamut, but we're talking about, say, Down syndrome, autism,
exactly,
epilepsy. What is
traumatic brain injury? I mean, it spans from autism all the way to, ventilator dependent. Okay. So really the full spectrum. The criteria is that you have to be formally classified as disabled before you turn age 22. That's what allows you to.
So what's the history of the company? So, I mean, you didn't start it, obviously. You came on as CEO. What's the origin story?
So our founder, Shane Spots, amazing guy. He's our president. He spent his entire career really figuring out how do you make this population get better access to care.
Does he have like a personal connection to that?
He does. He used to be the disability director in Indiana. And what he noticed was that home and community-based service providers, which are, unskilled workers for the most part, they serve these individuals 24/7 in their homes. And so sad, a lot of the motto is, when in doubt, refer out, meaning if you don't know what to do with a patient, send them to the ER. And the cost for this population is escalated because they send people to the ER. But if we're able to create a solution for home and community-based service providers that gives them technology, that gives them a stake, a financial stake in our business, that makes it easy for them, we can take that 1 month per year that people are spending on average in the hospital and reduce it to 2 weeks, 1 week by availing telehealth, by managing their pharmacy better. Many are polypharmacy, meaning they're on multiple drugs.
Mhm.
And so when we're able to do that, you can see a dramatic shift in the cost. Very simple things to do. And so Shane, mapped out this thesis about 15 years ago. And part of the reticence in this market to date of going to managed care has been the health plans don't know how to manage this population. This population is very different than traditional Medicaid. And so for the most part, it's been managed on a fee-for-service basis, meaning the state pays claims, there isn't a managed care company involved. And what Shane did brilliantly is he said, I'm going to go to the home and community-based service providers and get them on board. And they're going to be at the center of this ecosystem. We're going to give them an ownership interest. And that has caused a massive shift in momentum from against managed care to for managed care if it is the Deon model. So we've been able to open up a market that has historically been foreclosed from any type of managed care to operating in a way where we put these home workers at the center to incent them on doing the right thing for their patients.
So one of the things we like to talk a lot about on this podcast are the different stages of development in startups. And there's a theory out there, you can pick whatever number you want, but there's a certain type of CEO that gets a company off the ground from the idea, from the paper into like sort of momentum, maybe takes it from 0 to 5 million. And then there's a different type of CEO that takes it, say, from 5 to 50. And then of course there's a massive scaling type CEO that takes it to 5 to whatever, 500 or even beyond. Did the founder, did he come to that realization that he needed someone that had sort of, more chops to scale this thing, and that's why he reached out to you? Or we're going to talk a little bit about that discussion you had with him.
Yeah, it's really funny because when he brought me on, it was because as part of his funding round with Town Hall Ventures, which is Andy Slavitt's venture fund, they said, we want to bring on a CEO who has done this before, knows how to fundraise. And he was very reticent at doing it. And so we met under the guise of this kind of like tension that was existing. And really what we did for
like a forced date.
It was like a prearranged marriage of sorts. And said, like, I don't know what you're looking for, but let's just talk. And so we talked for about 6 months, got to know each other really well. And I said, I'm not looking to take over your baby or bastardize your baby. I want to support you in this, to the point where, like, if you can come back as CEO, that's my goal. And so we structured, my arrangement where I came on as executive chairman. We started to fundraise together, really developing a rapport.
And at that point, it had angel funding, basically?
It had angel funding, seed investment, and then started as CEO 1-1. And really, it's to take the company from where we're at now and to do all the fundraise, which we've been doing, and then to figure out how do we make this company scale from what we are today to, we're looking at right now a run rate starting in 2027 of around $800 million in revenue. And so it's taking it and kind of getting through the fast pace startup stuff, all the messy building and running.
What do you think is the critical pivot point that's going to allow you to sort of reach that type of scale that quickly?
It is adoption by the home and community-based service providers of our care model. If they adopt it, it allows us to benefit the members, treat them better, give them better care, access to services and support. It also allows saving money. So really everything is, or I shouldn't say everything, but a lot is predicated on their adoption of this. But, again, We're giving them the technology to make their lives so much easier. Right now, I mean, we see in Minnesota.
Are there any structural impediments or either regulatory or just cultural or otherwise that might sort of hinder their adaptability?
Well, right now it's like a lot of these providers are pen and paper. You see all the fraud that's happening in Minnesota right now. That is in home and community-based service providers because it's very hard to track, their claim submission. And so we are automating everything and giving people technology, which then makes their lives easier. Nobody wants to sit in an ER for the day. They're able to do things more effectively at scale, serve people better, and really just have a more fulfilling career versus a job.
Now, one of the things that, Sarah, that you and I have talked about over the years from time to time, usually with a margarita in front of us, but that's a different story.
Where is mine? I was waiting for it.
You got here too early. The social determinants of health. And talk a little bit about how these environmental factors can be particularly complicated when you're dealing with a sort of a high-risk population like this one.
Yeah. This population is not, I call it a new vertical in healthcare because a lot of people associate social determinants or social drivers of health with Medicaid. Well, while the payer for this population is primarily Medicaid, the variability in determinants is wide. So you could have people who are billionaires whose kids are on Medicaid waivers because they're disabled.
That's interesting.
Literally, the structure and the support you don't get in any other way except if you're on Medicaid. But there's things like transportation. That's always a barrier. There's, social isolation, which happens so often. Even things like going to the dentist or the ophthalmologist that we take for granted. To take somebody who's ventilator dependent to a dentist, think about how complicated that is.
I never thought about that, yeah.
So it magnifies everything and it makes things much more complicated. And it also, really deconstructs a family unit because all the attention goes to, the kid who has IDD. I always say you're only as happy as your unhappiest kid. And so a lot of the siblings get kind of lost in this, because they don't have IDD, they can manage. So you've got things well beyond social determinants of health that I think really influences population as well as how, the whole family unit is managed.
Now, this seems like the type of company that probably will get to a certain scale and then be picked up by sort of one of the larger players in the space. Is that kind of like the trajectory you're angling for?
Right now we're looking to build just a solid company and one, unlike traditional kind of startups that go from, 0 to 5 to 10, we're going from 0 to like $1 billion in a year. So we're looking to create something that is sustainable, that's differentiated, and frankly, it's a new way of delivering Medicaid for very complex populations. So if we can do it for IDD, there's a whole host of other populations that need this type of carve-out structure. And so our goal is to create something that is sustainable, that serves our members well, where we have great outcomes, and really sets a different tone and tenor for how managed care is delivered in the future.
As you can see by the name of this podcast, the word storytelling is there front and center. Tell me about how you're thinking about the storytelling around this company and what you're trying to solve and where it's trying to go.
Well, I think the way we explain the problem is through storytelling. And so I think a lot of this comes to life with that ability to tell the different stories of the populations in a way that's impactful, but also reaches the audience of whether it's an investor or a legislator or governor, how they can relate to this, because a lot of people don't relate to it and think of it as a very niche-y space. As you know, my business partner with another company I started, Bill Whiteley, we started a health insurance company under the same guise of my thesis of like these really difficult, complex problems are rooted in regulatory complexity. And if you can unlock that, there's massive markets and big problems to solve. It's just you've got to be able to deal in that mud.
Sarah, this has been great. Thanks for coming on the podcast and telling us about this, and best of luck to you.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
For Leverage Storytelling, I'm Arick Wierson. We'll see you next time.